From the light came the Father, from the darkness the Mother. That is both the beginning and the end. The Holy Scriptures. Emmanuel Moore knelt at the foot of the altar, palms pressed together in prayer, mouth open. Above her, the prophet loomed in robes of black velvet, his head shaved briskly, his bloodied hands outstretched. She peered up at him, tracing the path of the long, jagged scar that carved down the side of his neck, and thought of her mother. In a fluid motion, the prophet turned from her, robes rustling, as he faced the altar where a lamb lay gutted. He put a hand to its head, then slipped his fingers deep into the wound. As he turned to face Emmanuel again, blood trickled down his wrist and disappeared into the shadows of his sleeve, a few of the droplets falling to the stained floorboards at his feet. He painted her with the blood, his fingers warm and firm as they trailed from the dip of her upper lip down to her chin. He lingered for a moment, as if to catch his breath, and when he spoke, his voice was ragged. "Blood of the flock." Emmanuel licked it away, tasting brine and iron as she pressed to her feet. "For the glory of the Father." On her way back to her pew, she was careful not to spare a glance at the lamb, an offering from her grandfather's flock. She'd brought it as a tribute the night before, when the cathedral was empty and dark. She had not witnessed the slaughter. She'd excused herself and retreated outside long before the apostles raised their blades. But she'd heard it, the prayers and murmurs drowned out by the cries of the lamb, like those of a newborn baby. Emmanuel watched as the rest of her family moved through the procession, each of them receiving the blood in turn. Her sister Glory went first, dipping to her knees and obliging the prophet with a smile. Glory's mother Anna, the younger of the two Moore wives, took the blessing in a hurry, herding her other daughter, Honor, who licked the blood off her lips like it was honey. Lastly, Martha, the first wife and Emmanuel's grandmother, accepted the prophet's blessing with her arms raised, fingers shaking, her body seized by the power of the Father's light. Emmanuel wished she could feel the way her grandmother did, but sitting there in the pew, all she felt was the residual warmth of the lamb's blood on her lips and the incessant drone of her heartbeat. No angels roosted at her shoulders, no spirit or God stirred in her. When the last of the congregation was seated, the prophet raised his arms to the rafters and began to pray. "Father, we come to thee as servants and followers eager to do thy work." Emmanuel quickly bowed her head and squeezed her eyes shut. "There may be those among us who are distant from the faith of our ancestors, numb to the Father's touch and deaf to his voice. On their behalves, I pray for his mercy. I ask that they find solace, not in the mother's darkness, but in the light of the Father." At that, Emmanuel cracked one eye open, and for a moment, she could have sworn the prophet's gaze was on her. His eyes were wide open at the height of his prayer, staring at her in the gaps between bowed heads and shaking shoulders. Their eyes met, and his flicked away. "May the Father's kingdom reign." The prophet's flock spoke as one, "Now and forevermore." Emmanuel lay by the river's edge with her friend Leah, shoulder to shoulder, both of them drunk off the warmth of the midday sun. Yards away, the rest of the congregation gathered in fellowship. For most, the shadow of the Sabbath slaughter had already faded to a distant memory. All was peaceful, and the congregation was content to abide in that. At Emmanuel's side, Leah shifted onto her back, peering into the thick banks of the clouds that loomed overhead. She was a vision, dressed in sky-blue chiffon, her skirts billowing gently with the breeze. "It's a good day," she said, smiling as the wind snatched her hair. In the scriptures and the stories, in the stained-glassed windows of the cathedral, or the paintings that hung from its stone walls, The angels always looked like Leah, golden-haired and blue-eyed, dressed in fine silks and satins, with full cheeks and skin as pale as river pearls. As for the girls like Emmanuel, the ones from the outskirts, with dark skin and raven-black curls, cheekbones as keen as cut stone, well, the scriptures never mention them at all. There were no statues or paintings rendered in their likeness, no poems or stories penned in their honor. They went unmentioned, unseen.